Okay, when has your passion for comics started?
When I was a very young boy, I think. Must have been about 4 or 5, reading, buying and reading British comic books. First, I think, ones just meant for kids, and then started to read books meant for a few older children. Again, it was just, they were there, they were exciting, they were flashy, they were science fiction, they were American. When I was stuck in a very small mining town in a rural part of England, it was everything I wanted and everything that wasn't around me.
Has your graduation in politics studies helped you in finding a job or in your job itself?
Well, working in politics, I studied politics for 3 years at Newcastle University in England, and I did that because I really did not know what I wanted to do as a career, and it opened a few doors for me, certainly. I worked in advertising for a long time, and certainly the idea of being able to create an argument was something that was very much a part of learning politics, and just as much learning advertising, and again also in telling stories, I think. Certainly the idea of working out why you believe something or what you believe and the reasons for it and against it, and understanding why people believe the things they do is all about creating an argument, creating a story, creating a narrative, finding a point of view and expressing it in whatever form, whether that be advertising, in writing comic books, in journalism. I find it very useful indeed.
When we speak about gossip, we think about English tabloids and TV stars, but your gossip is a bit different. It's also a serious one, isn't it?
Well, it can be. I mean, I'm a big believer in the tabloid press, the gossip press. I think they perform a wonderful service in our society. They expose aspects of our world that we have, we would never have had access to any other way. And they take all the pomposity of celebrity and fame and just reduce it down, saying that you worship these people for being pop stars or politicians or whatever, but they're just humans like anybody else, with the same foibles, the same problems, and I think it makes people much more relatable. And but I also do believe it has a very serious, really serious point as well. Exposing corruption, I think, is a great role that politics plays. I mean, the gossip plays. I do that in my work where I can, where I find sort of injustices. I can tackle it in a way that's a respectable newspaper or journalist couldn't come close to. I have no contacts that I can't burn. I can't. I've not got a desire to actually work in the comic book industry like many comic book journalists. So I don't care who I offend on the way, as long as I make a good story. No, I don't think I'm that separate from, say, the British gossip newspapers and the like. I mean, I think, if anything, they will form me in the first place.
Which aspects of your job, of your many jobs, do you prefer most?
Well, I love basically breaking out a story in the comic book industry that nobody had a clue existed, there were no signs it was coming, and it being 100% accurate as long in advance as possible, whether that's another one that happened earlier in the year. I wrote a story that DC Comics in America were planning a Watchmen 2, a sequel to Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' book, something that was laughed at when I suggested that it was happening. No, this could never happen. And there were all sorts of blogs that said, no, this is nonsense. They all linked to my original story, and I got lots of hits, but they were all saying, no, this is an absolute nonsense story, this will never happen. He's just talking absolute rubbish. And lo and behold, 6 months later, Alan Moore goes on record talking about how he'd been approached by DC to do Watchmen 2 or sign off on other people doing it, and then I spoke to other creators who they'd also been approached for doing it, and so I was able to report what they said. And so that was a good one. That was this project exists. No one outside of a few people had any clue that it existed, and I got it out. Everyone knew about it, and it may even have changed the project itself. So yeah, that was a good one.
How is the actual situation of comics in USA in this day of crisis? In this period?
Well, sales are down a bit. Things seem to be shrinking a bit. Digital comic sales seem to be up a bit. Some people are making money off the films. Some people aren't. It's a bit of a state of flux. People aren't sure whether this is the start of the collapse of the comic book industry in terms of print, at least, or whether it's just going through another one of its cycles of ups and downs. There's probably too many creators chasing too few dollars. Lot more people who want to make it a career than can actually make it a career. But some are doing very well and doing some wonderful, creative, incredibly imaginable work that I couldn't have even conceived of a few years ago. So it's a very bright day for an awful lot of creativity, but there's so much mediocre work trying to drag it down.
Do you think it is better in Europe or?
Oh, far better in Europe. The European comic scene is far more diverse. There's a great quality in terms of writing and art. I mean, there are exceptions, obviously. I mean, I don't know whether I think the very, very best of America and the very, very best of Europe and the very, very best of England, they're probably about level. But overall, the European countries, Italy, France, Germany, Spain, Scandinavia, I would say are far superior to America. So in terms of quality, of course they all have their ups and downs, the sort of good work and the bad work. That's true everywhere.
Isn't internet a problem for comics copyright as for different other?
Yeah, there's been a lot of pirating, and that's causing problems to some people. Certainly, I was talking to someone who has an image comic book out in America and sold, I think it was 3,000-4,000 copies, and then just told me that 25,000 copies have been downloaded online. So you kind of think if a few of those had gone over to print, it might have actually survived, and that's a deep shame because the comic book itself was wonderful. So there's that. That is a problem, I think. I don't know if that's going to be solved. We have to find different, more imaginative solutions elsewhere. But in other ways, the internet is a great way for comic book fans to meet, to talk, to expose each other to other work, to see that it's not just them in their local comic book shop and maybe a convention every year. There's every hour, every day they can talk to comic book fans from across the world and get exposed to all sorts of creators if they choose, and a lot of them do. So it's good. Internet is great for some things, not great for other things.
Can comics have a future with the new technologies as an iPad? Maybe reading comics on the screen?
I mean, there are. I mean, there's a number of publishers are moving to the iPad for a lot of their work. Marvel and DC in America are doing it. I see it in Europe all the time. France is a big move that way of late. I mean, the whole the idea of the French market of renting comic books, downloading and renting comic books, which then disappear after a few weeks. That's new. I think that's very interesting. Certainly getting comics into the hands of people cheaply. It's not not in a physical format, and it's not really good in the collection. But certainly getting people to read comics, to pay for comics, and to read more of them. I think that's a wonderful idea. I'd like to see more of that. Certainly, one thing I'd like to see about the iPad, I think, is we're still a bit trapped in I think in America and in Europe as well. It's the very first comic books from the 1930s. They were just comic books with strips taken from the newspapers and folded down into the sides. So all the comic books you picked up, they just they were all told like the strips. You get a strip in that format. And it took a little while before someone realised that actually, hang on, what you can do is you can tell a story so it goes down the whole page and actually goes from page to the next page, the next page, and you can tell a whole story over all the different pages, and then it can continue into another issue and another issue. And right now, this is probably the iPad. We're still thinking in the old terms. We're scanning in pages from printed comic books and say, look, read this sliver of a dead tree that's been photocopied, when you can actually take comic books on the iPad are doing so much more things. One of the biggest things is the idea of the infinite canvas. That even though the page on the iPad you've got is this large, the actual whole page could be as big as this whole table. And by moving the iPad around, you can actually, or moving it through, you can see the rest. So rather than just having to turn the pages, just getting one page, the next page, you can just let the pages flow. You can have one large page on a very, very long strip that might go for, say, 30 feet. And you can just tell it, using the iPad, you can just scroll from one panel to the next without actually having to have pages like that. And that's the